presentations were very good. My question is to Lanju. How exactly do you guys do the root cause analysis and analyze what came wrong in the process? Because you said that you could reduce the scrap a lot, but you also mentioned that that's not real time. So you are always looking at least 2 hours delayed data. So how does the operator has time to take a decision or take an action to actually reduce what's happening in the process?
Can you hear me? Thank you. And look, with the scrap data, what happens is there's a quality process that takes place after the process is completed. For instance, the plating process takes around 11 hours in total. So what happens is that before then, the entire process is declared to be good production, then it goes through a quality management process. And then in that time, I mean, that time takes around, I would say, another hour or so. But at that stage, then, when they check and see that, you know what, this beam is actually not good enough, then they say, oh, okay, so then there's a process, I mean, there's a problem in the entire process. So then they go back and then they start to drill down. And then this is where now then the EMI data comes into play, because then they will say, oh, okay, then this, you know, batch of coins was actually not, you know, very good. Where did the problem occur? So the operators don't really have to act immediately. This is now real time, but rather they have to wait until, you know, the quality management process takes its course, and then after that, then that's when they can come back and then start to do the drilling down and checking really where did the problem occur. Okay.
Does anybody else want to comment, or? Okay. Any more questions from the audience? Okay, Rick. We need the mic. Is there a mic?
I can talk now.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Looks like most of your dashboards are around OEE. Could you give me just a rough idea of how much time it took or expenditure to develop those dashboards and to get the data in a format the dashboards were effective?
Now, you're asking about the OEE and getting the data in an effective format and how much time that took.
Look, the actual development of the dashboard is the easiest part, as far as I'm concerned. I think it took us around 2 weeks or so just to develop the dashboards. But the major challenge has always been around the integration of the data. Being able to get it from all the PLCs, from all the other equipment in the plant, and then be able to integrate it. That was the major challenge. And I think I mentioned that in my presentation as well. We had a problem with availability, because we, before our new engineering manager came into force, we were actually using downtime mainly as the biggest, you know, factor around availability. But when he came in, he said, you know what, in order for us to calculate our OEE properly, we need to use uptime, which means now we will be in a position to know exactly because, I mean, with downtime, we just, all the stops of the machines, when the operators stop the machine, they give you the reason why it stopped and they record it, and then after that they go. But you then take overall that this machine was supposed to be, you know, up for 24 hours, for instance, and then you just say, okay, for so many hours then it was down, or for so many minutes it was down, therefore, downtime was this. But actually, he said, you know what, we need to take overall the uptime, because you know at that time the machine was effective. It was working. And then obviously you then have to check the quality, if this is basically bad production versus good production, and then the performance of the machine, and then after that you get your OEE. So that part, which is the getting of the data and integrating it into our ODS, was the one that really challenged us. It took us over 2 months just to make sure that we're getting the data in the right format, in the right manner, and then we're integrating it properly. And then after that, the dashboarding was actually the simplest part of the process.
I have kind of a connected question. What kind of personnel did you use to determine what pieces of data would be the correct data for each dashboard? Did you use controls engineers or plant floor mechanics or plant floor operations supervisors?
I'm just going to repeat the question because they're recording it, so because they're not on the mic. But you're just asking what type of personnel was getting the data, or?
Was actually involved in determining what data you would use for that.
Okay, so what personnel were involved in the data of getting the data to the,
You determine what that data was, how did you staff that?
okay, and how did you staff it?
Look, we've got the engineers in the factory, which is the guys that are working with the machines, and they know exactly what they're looking for. So they were mainly the major users in there. But also we've got another team that we call production accounting, which is a team that basically ensures that the movement of the data and the material and everything within the factory is actually recorded accordingly. You can call them, production auditors, if you know what I mean. So those guys are the guys that then ensure that every data and the detail that we're looking for is actually recorded and accounted for. So it's mainly the engineers, which is basically the guys that are working with the operators, but also working with the machines. But on the other side, it was also the production accountants basically that we dealt with.
Ed, did you want to comment on what you guys, who is getting the data in your facility?
I mean, the primary users of the data are operators. I mean, that's what we built this application for, our operators. But we were actually surprised because there's significant interest, even outside of our operations group. I mean, we run an energy market, and there's a significant amount of folks within our markets team that is also consuming that data as well.
Okay, there's a question over here in the
Yeah, I
back.
had a
So.
question along the lines of, it's mostly for Ed, but it applies to both. I was curious, when you set up DEMA, what was, I heard you say you got the outage management system in there. I was kind of curious, what were the hardest things, and this was a little bit of a segue from the last question, what were the hardest things to get into the system? Is that something you brought into the PI system, or is that something that you had in another context database and used an integrator to put together, or were there other pieces of data that were hard to bring in to your dashboard?
So we've had a GIS system for well over 10 years before we started this project. All of the transmission lines, generation, substation, everything was already mapped out in our GIS system. Problem is that data was it was our planning data. It was for the group that plans out new transmission and new generation. It wasn't the EMS data, so the names didn't match up. The real-time data, however, is all EMS data. So our biggest challenge was matching the data from our planning database to our EMS data. And we're still doing that. In fact, that's why we're doing this in smaller phases. We started with transmission lines, and we're slowly integrating generation.
You put that into the PI, or you put that in?
So all the data, all of the real-time data is in Pi. All of the real-time data is in Pi. Now, I'm sorry?
And the rest of it you have in the GIS?
Yeah, and the rest of it's in the GIS system. Now there's an application from Esri called it's an application from OSIsoft, the Pi integrator, or I'm not sure what they're calling it nowadays, the Pi integrator, but it helps you move data from OSI Pi into Esri's Geo Event Processor, which is another product, and it can do that in real time. And those are the tools that we're using.
I have a question for you, Ed. Are you, and maybe you've already said it and I missed it, but are you taking the information to other constituents outside of the dispatch area to kind of give them more of that information? You know, you've collected, you've got it, you've got some great stuff that's there, you're enhancing it, but there are other people in the organization that might benefit from that. Tell me how you're doing that, or are you thinking about it?
So this is an internal application only.
Yeah, and I'm talking about internal constituents, so maybe beyond dispatch, it might be going to the field for getting materials ready for dispatch or other types of areas that might help.
So we don't own any material at all, but I think you're making a point. So we do work with generation owners. We work with transmission owners, and sometimes it helps to be on the same page when you're communicating with them. If we see something on the geographic map and they don't see it, maybe because the names of the units are different in our system, then it's come up in conversation. Do we share this interface with our member companies? Obviously, we want to put this out on our website.
No,
but it could be something that we could potentially, depending on the data, maybe we potentially share some of this information with the member companies, definitely.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions actually, Fred. What do you think will be the next steps? Because when you can integrate data from weather and all the information that you have on OSI, you could actually try to run more deep analytics to really understand what are the causes for your faults and so on. And the other part is with actually future data that you can put inside Pi. You could actually run simulation scenarios or load scenarios where you could try to prepare for what should be the next step for operators. So are you intending to move into that, to run simulation scenarios and put that in future data on Pi or anything like that?
Good question. So one thing we're looking at doing, and I'm not an EE, but I'll do my best here. So we have voltage flows that affect the stability of the grid. And you could implement voltage flows in a heat map, which could indicate where outages are and play through that data. So that's one thing we're considering. I don't know how we're going to do that, but it's something that we're considering. Showing heat maps of voltage flow would be one of the next things. The other thing we do, we take training very seriously at PJM. We put our dispatchers through 7-week rotations of training, 1 week at a time, each shift. We have a number of most of our applications are in that simulator environment, including a full-blown EMS, energy management system. We'd like to get DEMA in there. We'd like to get DEMA in there to play through historical data. So take Hurricane Sandy and the impact on the reliability of power grid. What did that storm look like? What systems were in and out of service? So we're looking at that. We've talked about future data in Pi. We know that that's something that OSI Soft is really pushing. There's opportunity. It's just not available yet, so it's not even really on my radar at this point. It's not available at PJM anyway.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? I have a question, actually. What about cultural issues? Did you find that, why don't we start with Lunjil and then Ed or Marianne if you want to comment on it. Did you find that there's changes in how the people react to it? What was their response to having the ability to look at the different information that they needed? And how did you deal with cultural issues?
Look, on our side, we had built up a very, very strong change management process because we realized that this was never going to be successful without the utilization of these dashboards. So we partnered with our organizational development team within our human resources space, and then whenever we have a major project like this one, we always involve them early enough in the project so that they can at least have all the awareness projects, also programs, and then after that, when the projects have been delivered, the actual dashboards have been delivered, they go and talk to the people and find out exactly if that's the information that they're looking for and if they are making better decisions now, and if it's really providing any insights onto what they've been looking for. So for us, we basically, are working very, very close with our organizational development team in the HR space to ensure that, change management process is implemented fully.
Sure, Marianne.
So one of the things that we've noticed when we start to sell EMI projects, enterprise manufacturing intelligence, is that it does, as Lunjile said, it goes cross-company and so of course cross-cultures. So when we sell a project that has a complex application, so there's multiple data sources that are being accessed, it's more than just a data historian. I wrote that down because I wanted to make it really clear. When Lunjile was talking about the types of data coming into his application, it was from manufacturing execution systems, it was from a data historian, it was from real-time data perhaps coming from a process controller. So you have constituents that own that data, and they have to participate with you in order to allow you to access that and then to use it. And then you've got people that are going to consume it. Certainly dashboarding, or what Ed was showing with his really deep dashboard is a way to easily consume the information. And I wrote down situational awareness because we use that with human-machine interface design. So it's a way in which you are implementing the project and the way in which you present the data. You have people everywhere from the plant all the way up to, as Lingeelia's, IT that will use the information.
Ed?
In building DEMA, the first phase, like I mentioned, was really just the geographic maps with a weather overlay. We kind of just did that on a small budget and implemented it and showed it to the dispatchers to see if they liked it. We got a bite, right? So they were interested. At that point, we really brought the dispatchers into the design, the development. In fact, we're using a development firm, Integral GIS, based out in California, and we're based out in Pennsylvania. And I was flying dispatchers out with me to meet with the developers. Getting the end users involved in the development and the application goes a very long way, and implementing what they ask for.
Did you want to comment, Peter?
Actually, I have a question. So how many people here have a UX department or user experience team that's doing design work today? Just show of hands. 1, 2, 3. So there was an interesting comment made at one of the keynotes. I think it was a guy from Georgia Pacific who said, you need to innovate and think differently. I would encourage all of you guys to hire a UX person. Every single one of you. Get a UX guy to start looking at data, or gal, and be able to understand how they see data and what that flow looks like and what that means, whatever tools you use. And OSI doesn't prohibit that, right? You want to be able to use Tableau, Spotfire, Excel, whatever groovy tool you like. SAP, HANA, cool. But get someone that understands that space and understands UX, because it is a very different world. That's all I got.
Okay, I have another question. Has the EMI application replaced or complemented other applications in your facilities? You want to start, Ed?
It's really a complementary application at this point. We have one of the pie displays shows a map of 500 and 765 kV transmission lines. It actually takes up a fairly large section of our video wall. We could once we get the generator data on here, we could potentially replace that display. But right now, it's completely complementary.
It's exactly the same on our side as well. It's a complementing business intelligence tool, because we've got, we're using it mainly on the production side, which is basically all the operational data. But once you start going into the financial data, the customer data, and all the other data that normally goes through your normal warehousing environment, then we've got another tool there, which is the business objects from SAP, and we use that one. So we basically have the two, one on the manufacturing side, and then the other one on what you would call traditionally, your customer, financial, and all the other data that you can easily integrate, and planning, and all of the other data. But going forward, we are obviously trying to streamline and see if we can't, have one business intelligence tool that basically does everything, which at this stage I think it's possible. It's a question of us just, applying our minds, and then after that seeing if we can implement it without really disrupting our business operations.
Peter, did you want to say anything? Marianne? Okay. Well,
I would just say that for the customers that we've seen, they use EMI as kind of a stepping stone. So they'll start with the story reporting or the real-time data reporting, event and alarm management, and then they'll use the EMI, Enterprise Manufacturing Intelligence, in order to provide them contextualized reporting. So putting data in relationship to one another. So you're getting these cause and effect relationships, which is what South Africa Mint is using, what other customers that we have are using, regardless of what industry it is, in order to help them understand why things are occurring the way they are. So people are using things like, why are second shift reporting better production than the first shift? Or why is it that when it's raining outside, the quality of the product goes down? So it's helping them to make that advanced decision making.
Okay, well, if there's no other question, I'd like to ask one last one. And that was, did anything surprise any of you when you implemented EMI? And any of you can answer this question, or all of you. Were there any surprises?
Maybe I'm just confident. I think executive management was very surprised. There had been some mapping applications prior that just failed miserably. But I knew that we could pull this off if we did it in smaller phases, and it really did take off. So I really wasn't surprised, but there was a lot of challenge from executive management within PJM, and I think that they were surprised at the success of the application.
Look, I think historians surprised us. Just the way we integrated the data with historian, it's actually now one of the most successful, pieces of this entire implementation, because all the other flow meters that are running at the factory now, they're using historian to start doing trending there, and then after that, as Marianne was saying earlier, then come in and put in your, EMI, and then start to dashboard it. But at the beginning, you can trend it easily within historian, and then you see if everything else is going according to the way you want it, and then after that, you can obviously then dashboard it and start to do your own analytics in there. So historian was really a very big surprise for us, and it was hugely successful because everybody likes it, especially in the factory, because it just gives them that real-time information easily and immediately, and they can make the quick decisions.
What about, just one more quick question. What about cloud computing? Are your companies doing anything? Are you seeing a lot of data being put in the cloud? Peter, why don't you comment on that?
Sure, that seems to be a growing trend. We're seeing more and more companies look to transition off of a traditional CapEx model onto an OpEx, where they can take that data, operationalize it in the cloud, and then be able to distribute it out to other stakeholders, even go from different PI systems to a PI system on a publish and subscribe model.
Marianne?
Yes, absolutely. So, like Peter said, we've also got a data historian. It's now available in the cloud. This is not a commercial, but it's a way in which for us to give customers, especially if they're smaller and they don't have the IT staff, a way in which to get the data historian, so real-time data, and then being able to report off of that either from single or multiple sites. Interestingly enough, about 4 years ago, I was on a panel here at ARC where we started to talk about cloud computing, and no one was doing it. And in fact, it didn't even seem people were interested in it. And so a lot has happened in the 4 years. The technology has advanced. It's gotten a little less expensive. And I think that everyone is so used to now using mobile devices and looking at other types of cloud applications that it's not quite as scary or risky in order to implement. So we're absolutely seeing that.
So, anyone else want to add to it?
Look, on our side, we're still battling with information security. Whenever we start thinking about the cloud, we always go hybrid all the time. So we say, no, it has to be a hybrid cloud. You have to have, your private cloud on one end, and then on the other side, the public cloud. Simply because most of our data and the cloud providers in Africa, they tend to have a data center that's in Europe and mainly in London. And therefore, every time, whenever you're requesting data for your dashboards, you have to go via London and back again. So it's been that challenge for now. But it is something that is slowly picking up within Africa. And we are, most of us, because of what just Peter was talking about, because our capex is very high. And therefore, we want to, operationalize most of this expenditure. And once we operationalize it, it becomes easier to manage your cost. So we're trying very hard, but at this stage, we're just battling with information security.
I'd say we have a number of different types of cloud-type applications, and we've had them for years. But usually it's not related to operations-related data. We have certain security standards that we need to adhere to, so it's not really an option for us right now. It's not something we would rule out, but at this point, it's a little bit more difficult for us to implement something in cloud-based systems.
Okay, is there any other questions? Oh, wait a second. Wait for the mic.
I heard Marianne mention that Schneider does offer cloud services with their products, and I guess I'm directing this question to you and to Peter from OSI. I'm sure you both, provide cloud applications, do you provide cloud services, or have you done research to recommend preferred cloud services in light of keeping what Ed was talking about, in light of looking at production data security?
We do both. So we have our own services application group that will take the products and put them in the cloud and then do the maintenance. As Lynn Julie said, either a public, private, or hybrid. Most of our customers are also looking at hybrid because it seems to be easier for them, although public or private is the way to start out. And then Schneider has an entire other team within their organization that only does cloud services. And additionally, we partner with people. So for example, Microsoft is our chosen cloud provider. So we have everything on Azure.
Yeah, we're a little different. So, as you know, OSIsoft provides a data infrastructure. We have a number of partners that will go out and create applications. The big shift is putting Pi in the cloud. We do offer a managed Pi service, so when you do load Pi in the cloud on Azure or Amazon or private cloud, whatever you want, we will monitor that for you. But the application and everything else is the responsibility of the customer.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Well, all I'd like to say is in closing is, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank our speakers, who I thought were world-class speakers, literally. And I thought the demos and the videos were terrific. And I think that if you get a chance, take the survey. And I do think that there's a lot of growth in EMI, and I think it's going to continue to grow, and I think we're going to see phenomenal, just like we saw today, applications that are going to be used, because people are using this information to make much better decisions. And it is saving them money, and they are seeing returns. So thank you very much.